Can you imagine, dear viewer, that something terrifying could get on a passenger bus and ride with them after midnight? And not only that, but something unexpected happens because of that thing that got on the bus. I know you might find it hard to believe, but come with me and let me take you to the exact place where it happened. In China, specifically in the city of Beijing, on bus number 375. This bus left the station around midnight, at about 12 a.m., and it was the last bus to leave that station. The passengers inside the bus at that time were so few you could count them on your fingers. The bus was halfway through its route when suddenly the driver noticed two shadowy figures standing in the middle of the road in the middle of the night, in the freezing cold, signaling the bus to stop. The bus stopped, the door opened, and the two got on. When the driver saw these two, he was shocked and terrified, and all the passengers inside the bus were frozen with fear from what they saw. The bus then started moving again and continued its route. But the question is, were those who got on the bus that night really human or not? Why were the passengers and the driver so terrified? And most importantly, can you guess what happened to that bus that night? These are the questions we will find answers to in today's episode. For your information, this scary story is one of the strangest incidents that happened in China, and to this day, it remains unexplained. If this is your first time watching my channel and you're interested in horror, mystery, and crime stories, this is exactly what we offer here. Don't forget to subscribe, light up the channel with your support, and join my family. Now let's dive into the details of our terrifying story. Greetings to all the legends who joined us. To encourage me, let's break the 5,000 likes barrier on this episode. I know you can do it. All right, let's not waste more time. Let's start with the story details. The story begins, as I mentioned, in Beijing, China, specifically in November 1995. At that time, a bus was leaving Yuanmingyuan Station. This bus was the last one leaving the station that day. The bus number was 375. This was supposed to be the last trip for the bus, after which it would return normally to the station and start its work again the next morning, as usual. But what happened was completely the opposite. That day, at around midnight, the weather was very cold, with a light breeze. The bus driver got on and was accompanied by his assistant, who was usually a young woman responsible for supervising inside the bus, organizing passengers, and distributing tickets. After the bus started moving and traveled for some time, it stopped at a certain point and picked up 3 people. One was a young single man traveling alone, and the other 2 were a married couple. After that, the bus moved again and traveled a certain distance until it reached one of the stops and stopped. The door opened and an elderly woman got on. She walked down the aisle all the way to the second to last seat and sat there. The bus started moving again, continuing its journey through the dark night and cold weather. All the passengers were completely quiet and calm, just waiting for the trip to end and to get back to their homes. During the ride, after some time while the bus was moving, suddenly the driver slammed on the brakes hard, causing the passengers to hit their heads against the seats in front of them. The reason for the sudden stop in the middle of the road was that the driver saw 2 people standing strangely right in front of him on the road, signaling with their hands for the bus to stop so they could get on. The driver got angry at their rude behavior and the way they forced the bus to stop because he could have easily run them over. Besides, this bus never stops except at official stations. It doesn't stop randomly like that. But surprisingly, and although the passengers expected the driver to just ignore them and keep going, they were shocked when he actually stopped the bus and opened the door. What they saw next was shocking and terrifying, filling the hearts of all the passengers with fear. Even the driver was staring at the two figures, his mouth open in shock and horror. As soon as the two got on the bus, people finally understood why the driver was so shocked and terrified. They were two people with sharp, stiff and frightening features, dressed in something like the old traditional Chinese clothing. The kind people used to wear back then, worn and faded with time, and the clothes were way too big for them. But that's not the strange part. We said they were two people, but in reality there were three, not two, because they were carrying a third person between them, holding him up. His head was hanging down, and his face was hidden. It looked like he was exhausted and weak. When the three got on the bus, they walked down the middle aisle, supporting the third man silently, without saying a word. The other passengers on the bus watched them with fear because of their appearance until they reached the back seat, the very last seat. They sat the third man between the two and sat down next to him. The back seat is known to be one connected piece, like a bench. The seating arrangement on the bus was as follows. First, the driver and his assistant sat in the front. Behind them sat the married couple. Behind the couple sat the young single man. The elderly woman sat right behind the young man in the second to last seat. Finally, these three people came in and sat on the very last seat at the back of the bus. That meant the old woman was the closest one to them. She sat there silently and cautiously, watching them out of the corner of her eye, frozen in place from fear. Anyway, the bus started moving again, and the driver's assistant noticed the fear on everyone's faces. She leaned forward and spoke quietly to the passengers near the front, trying to calm them down, saying maybe those people had just come from a play or a performance or something like that. A few minutes passed, while the bus continued down the road. Then, the married couple told the driver they wanted to get off at the next stop. Sure enough, the driver stopped the bus, opened the door, and they got off. Now, who was left? Only the young single man, the old woman, and those three mysterious people sitting in the back seat, besides the driver and his assistant. The bus continued down the road again. What was strange was that the old woman, who was sitting closest to the three in the back, kept looking around nervously as the bus moved. There was no way those people were human. No way at all. And it wasn't just her. Everyone on the bus was uncomfortable and suspicious of the strange appearance of those three who suddenly boarded. All the passengers were tense the whole time, convinced that those three weren't human at all. They hadn't spoken a single word the entire ride, not one, except for the old woman, who eventually spoke because she was so close to them. What made it even scarier was that she had seen things that made her act in a very clever and unexpected way. Suddenly, the old woman grabbed the young man in front of her and started shouting loudly, "Thief! Thief!" The young man was completely shocked. He had no idea what was going on. She kept yelling at the top of her lungs, telling the driver that this young man had stolen her wallet and money. The guy tried to defend himself, saying, How could I steal from you when I've been sitting right in front of you the whole time?" But the old woman wasn't listening. She insisted on taking him to the police and filing a report. She demanded that the driver either drive them to the police station or drop them off right there so they could go on foot. Because of her loud voice and insistence, the driver finally pulled over in the middle of the road and let both of them off, then continued driving. Now here comes the usual question for this episode. Pause the video and comment down below. Why do you think the old woman got off the bus and pulled that stunt? Write your guesses in the comments, and let's see who gets it right in the end. Let's continue and find out the twist together. The shock came right after the old woman and the young man got off. She walked off calmly and left the guy behind like nothing had happened. The guy stood there in disbelief and shouted after her, "Weren't you just accusing me of stealing? What happened to you? Now you're just walking away like nothing happened? Let's go to the police station then." The old woman stopped calmly, turned toward him, and said word for word, "You should be thanking me for saving your life from certain death. If you had stayed on that bus, your life would have ended instantly." The young man asked, "What are you even talking about?" Then she started explaining the details of what she had seen on the bus, and the young man listened in complete disbelief. She said that the last 3 people who got on the bus weren't human. They were demons in disguise, and if he had paid attention to their features, he would have realized they weren't human at all. Their facial expressions didn't move, not even a little. It was like they had no soul. And if you looked closely, you'd notice that the long robes they were wearing completely covered their legs. Not a single part of their body was visible. That's because the only way you could tell what they really were was by their legs, which simply weren't human. The young man, shocked, asked her, "How do you know all this?" And the real shock came when she said she had confirmed it the moment she saw their feet, just as they sat behind her. She said the one sitting in the middle was the only human among them, but the other 2 had already finished him off. The young man, after hearing all of that, thought to himself, "No way. This old lady must be senile or just crazy." He didn't believe her story at all and simply walked away and went home. But the story didn't just end there, and what happened next was completely unexpected, because the very next morning, the young man was hit with shocking news. The bus they had been on the day before had officially been declared missing. It vanished without a trace and never returned to the station. The bus company filed a report with the police, and they did everything they could to find it. But there was no sign of it anywhere. The police officially announced that bus number 375 was completely missing, and that anyone who had any information or was on that bus that night should come forward immediately. The moment the old woman saw the news, she went straight to the police station and told them everything she saw that night in full detail, because she was a witness and had been on that bus. She said that 3 people had boarded along the way, and those 3 couldn't possibly have been human. They were either jinn or demons, but as usual, the police didn't believe in things like jinn or demons. They said, "She's probably just an old woman rambling nonsense. We can't open a report against a ghost." Now back to the young man. After he also heard the news about the missing bus, he too went to the police and gave them the full story. And just 2 days after, the bus disappeared, right before the case was about to be closed. The police received a phone call that day from one of the local residents. A resident who lives near Naya Lake in that area filed a report saying he saw a large bus submerged in the lake. When the police arrived at the location, he mentioned that's when the real horror began, because it was indeed bus number 375, the one that had gone missing. And I said, real horror, because what you're about to hear now is simply beyond comprehension. The location where they found the bus, the condition of the bodies, and the other things they saw, all of it confirmed that what happened wasn't the work of humans. The first terrifying fact was that the bus was found in an artificial lake nearly 100 kilometers away from where it was supposed to be. And the second chilling detail, none of the surveillance cameras along the roads showed the bus ever passing by or deviating from its original route. So how did it end up there? But the most shocking part was this. The fuel in the bus wasn't enough to make it that far. The station confirmed that the fuel in the tank was barely enough for a return trip. So how did the bus travel 100 kilometers? And then came the most horrifying discovery of all. When the police opened the fuel tank, they found it full of blood. Not a single drop of gasoline. But here's the biggest shock. When they pulled bus number 375 out of the artificial lake, they found 3 corpses inside, all in horrifying condition. One was the driver, another was the driver's assistant, and the last was an unidentified person, believed to be the man the other 2 passengers had been supporting. All 3 bodies had died in bizarre, terrifying, and unexplained ways. Neither the police nor the forensic team could determine the cause of death. What made it worse was that all 3 bodies had their mouths wide open, with expressions of pure terror frozen on their faces, as if they had seen something so horrifying it literally stopped their hearts. So the question remains, was this truly the work of demons, or was it something else? Something far beyond human understanding at the time? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. And that's it for today's story. You've been watching Tales of Terror